So next we'll continue the theme of increasing awareness with Erica Price. Erica is a recent graduate of the Arcadia University Genetic Counseling Program. She currently works at a pediatric and lysosomal storage disease as a genetic counselor at Inova Fairfax Hospital.
Thank you everyone for coming. So today I'm going to present on my thesis project, and my project basically was a pilot study to develop effective recruitment tools for Black undergraduate students into the genetic counseling field. I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. This is just an outline of what I'm going to go over today. So to give background, which Anna already did, basically. So we know already that Black citizens make up about 13% of the U.S. population, but when we look further into medical professions, we know that they make about 8% of medical doctors, 13% of nurses, 3% of physician assistants, 7% of physical therapists, and 1% of genetic counselors, which is why we're all here. And so in all of the research that's been done, in trying to find out experiences about minority students pursuing medical careers, they identify this leaky pipeline, which is basically the point at which an underrepresented minority diverges from a previously declared medical or dental path. Some of the goals of choosing a career they also have found have been financial support, have been flexible work hours, things that we would typically assume, and then some of the obstacles or the barriers to pursuing medical careers tend to be inadequate institutional support and resources, limited personal resources and social conflict, the lack of information about mentoring and advising, and then societal barriers. NSGC has been aware of this problem for a while, and so there have been many initiatives and recruitment programs. More notably, in 1993, there was a subcommittee that sent out mailers to HBCU, or historically Black colleges and universities, describing genetic counseling and encouraging people to apply. There have been diversity SIGs that have been formed, task force have been formed, diversity or tackling diversity has been implemented in our strategic plan. And then most recently, there was the first Minority Genetics Professional Network meeting, which I'm a member of, so go you guys, last year. But from all of these efforts, what you see and what Anna already highlighted is that for Black genetic counselors, that representation has stayed at around 1%. So getting more into my research, what I wanted to do is find a way, obviously, the best ways to recruit minority students, specifically Black students, into the genetic counseling profession. And so I wanted to contact HBCUs, which I will say from now on, and historically Black colleges and universities are HBCUs. And so I wanted to find the best way to contact them and develop relationships with these institutions. I also wanted to study information retention and interest in genetic counseling among this population. From a recruitment standpoint, my strategy was to primarily focus on HBCUs, and then later we'll discuss how I had to open it up to predominantly white schools with greater than 10% Black student population. My points of contact were originally career services departments, and then I also opened it up to biology and psychology department chairs and professors. And then because I studied at Arcadia and I'm from the DC area, those were my main focus areas. So this goes over basically how recruitment went. I initially sent out an email invitation to 12 HBCU career services departments, and that email was maybe a paragraph to a paragraph and a half long, basically asking could I come to talk to minority students about genetic counseling, if there are any opportunities already built in, could I come and talk to to some of their cohort. From those responses, I got 2 responses from those colleges. One I was able to set up a meeting with, and one declined participation. And then 10 of those colleges, I got no response. I followed up and sent the same email again. I still got 0 responses. From there, I went through I went on websites and contacted 8 colleges, and I contacted their biology department chairs. From there, I got 2 more colleges that were interested in the program, and then 6 that did not respond. And studying retention and student interest, I created a brochure and a presentation that highlighted the things that we already know are important through research about in choosing a career for minority students. So those things tended to be professional growth, salary, job security, the educational investment, and the educational requirements to start a career. So I created those educational materials. I wanted to split participant groups into just a brochure group, so they were just given the brochure, or they were given a brochure and I physically came to do a presentation basically outlining all of this information. At the end of the presentation and at the bottom of the brochure, there was a link to a 10-question multiple choice survey that had a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. When you were finished the survey, it prompted you to contact me if you were interested in genetic counseling so that I could send more resources on how to apply and different minority initiatives. The questionnaire focused on these topics, which were the roles of a genetic counselor, some of the misconceptions about genetic counseling, genetic issues in the Black community, and then again, I highlighted those career decision-making factors like salary, growth, job security, and educational investment. This is just a mock-up of the brochure that I actually sent out with the QR code to the link. And I made sure purposely that the answer to all 10 questions was in the brochure. And then here is just some of the slides that I presented. And again, the answer to all of the questions were in those presentation slides, and they were presented in the same way. So what happened? I was able to have one HBCU participate, and there were about 90 Black students. From there, I was able to get two sections. They were career and biology class. So they had 2 sections. One had 65 students and one had 25 students. So I made the 65 student section the presentation group, and then it made the 25 section student section the brochure group. I was able to get 42 completed surveys from the presentation group and 1 completed survey from the brochure group. No one contacted me expressing interest in genetic counseling from either group. And then just to kind of break down the answers from the presentation group, there was an average correct response of 7.5 out of 10, ranging from surveys that answered either 2 to 10 questions correctly. Most answer correctly was number 5, and least answer correctly was number 10, and then so number 5 basically asked, what do genetic counselors discuss with patients? And so 97% of people were able to correctly respond that it's family history. And then they were least likely to answer correctly the question about what other professional societies mention genetic counseling in their practice guidelines. I was also able to enroll one predominantly white school that had about 12% Black student population. So there were a total of 80 students. Of those 80 students, only 12 of them were Black, but they did have 2 sections, and this was a career and psychologies class. So the presentation group, I had section A, and then section B was the brochure group. There were 40 in each section. No one completed the surveys, and no one expressed any interest in genetic counseling. So for my discussion, just focusing on recruitment, from this I was able to learn that contacting department chairs and faculty garnered more interest in my program than contacting career service departments. And then from there, I was able to build on the opportunities because the career and biology professor also was the moderator or the advisor for the minority medical professionals group that was also on campus. So from there, because they're more connected with the specific type of student, you can obviously have more opportunities once you get that point of contact. And then for information and retention and interest, so in the presentation group, 60% of students were able to complete the survey versus the 1% from the brochure group. One of the limitations, or one of the things that we've discussed through my travels, is that this idea of contacting Black students at PWIs, and that obviously at a HBCU where the Black student population is about 92 to 96%, a lot of time and effort goes into creating these relationships, and so it could be that it's more worthwhile to target or to create these relationships with HBCUs, given that that's the population that we're looking for. And then further discussing that no one expressed interest in genetic counseling, and that could just be that it wasn't necessarily a passive form in order to get that contact. And so maybe if I instead decided to say, hey, here's a link that you can go to tell me that you're interested, from there, that could be one of the factors as to why no one expressed any interest in genetic counseling. The limitations of my study, so the lack of interest from HBCUs was something that was surprising to me, from faculty and staff and from career services, but it highlights obviously to me that there needs to be more than just throwing propaganda at students, and there needs to be more than just giving out information. There needs to be more than just a presentation, but instead potentially a long-term relationship that needs to be built with these institutions. I wasn't able to compare the presentation group and brochure group, obviously, because not many people were in the brochure group that completed the survey. The study constraints of this, because this was a thesis, so it was basically a one-year timeline. And then no demographic information was collected. That was specifically because I originally designed the study to only focus on HBCUs, but because I wasn't getting a response back, I had to open it up to PWIs, and so from there I needed more information about the demographics. Future directions. There are many. What's next for me? I would like to limit my recruitment site focus. I am in the DC Met area, and so there are several HBCUs in that area that I'd like to continue to stay in contact with. I'd like to do some qualitative research with Black GCs at NSGC to see if there are any more pipelines that we could identify. From there, I'd like to retool if there are any new themes that I find from that research, and then narrow my points of contact, as I've already discussed. Career services seems not to be the way to go, but kind of limiting that contact to career in psychology, career in biology professors. I know that, like, coming from an HBCU, a lot of HBCUs build that class specifically into their program, and so those would be the professors that I'd be trying to contact. I'd like to ideally create a database for Black students that are interested in genetic counseling, and maybe through a more passive way to kind of sign up to that list. And then my long-term goal is to promote partnerships between HBCUs and their neighboring GC programs, because I think that certainly is a place where you can find a lot of diverse and qualified applicants to kind of work our flow into genetic counseling. Okay, my acknowledgments. So I'd like to thank my study advisors, Kathy and Steve. I would like to thank the Arcadia program for training me and also being my safe haven. The study participants, the class of 2019, who have watched me cry over this project for what feels like forever. And my family and friends who have been very supportive. Those are my references. Thanks.